Drum rolls, please. With this painting and this artist, we get ready to leave this unit and enter the world of modernism. I'm going to spend more time than usual on Manet because he's such an important transitional figure, and also because every once in a while we really need to slow down and enjoy learning more about a work. This painting is not our required work by Manet. I'll get to Olympia in a few minutes. But The Luncheon on the Grass is too important to art history and too much a precursor to our required work for me to skip over it entirely. Manet entered 3 works in the Salon of 1863. The Salon judges rejected all 3. No surprise, they rejected 2/3 of the paintings submitted that year, including paintings by Courbet and Whistler. The rejected artists and at least some of the French public raised such a howl that the leader of France, by then Napoleon III, took the unusual step of opening a Salon de Refusés, or a Salon of the Rejected. Just a quick digression. This is the Whistler painting that the Salon judges rejected. Whistler was a leading American realist painter, and this became one of his most famous works. This painting, on the other hand, was the top hit of the Salon of 1863, and there's a smaller version hanging in the Met. So, what did Salon judges and Paris art lovers expect from nudes? They expected soft, rounded bodies with careful modeling. They expected averted eyes, and they expected allegory. Nude goddesses? Yes. Nude ladies sitting around in the park talking to fully clothed gentlemen? No. This neoclassical painting is not a required work, but it did once show up on an AP exam, and it's interesting from a sociological, if not necessarily an artistic point of view. The Queen of England, George III's wife, had dispatched a German painter to Florence to paint the Uffizi Gallery, a precursor to art museums. Note the aristocratic men gathered to admire the art, most notably the painting in the bottom center, which is, I trust that you recognize, Titian's Venus of Urbino. Here, women are definitely objects of observation and desire. They are subjects of painting, but they are not painters and they are not art connoisseurs. Feminist art critics often refer to this as the male gaze. We'll talk about that more in our last unit. It's hard to blame Manet for refusing to imitate the 19th century equivalent of a penthouse centerfold, but he was heavily influenced by earlier renditions of nudes, including Titian's. Here we see nudes cavorting with men in modern dress. This was modern for 1510. But they're nymphs, so it's okay, right? And they don't look us in the eye. The woman who served as Manet's model for the nude with the forthright stare was also his model for Olympia, so let's learn a little bit more about her. Well, this brings us to another famous homage to Titian in our required work. In this work, Manet is almost certainly representing Victorine as the mistress of a wealthy French bourgeois man, and she doesn't look especially ashamed about it either. But what is the expression on her face? Critics at the time found her gaze disturbingly forthright or defiant. What do you think her look is? I think she probably is forthright and defiant, but to me she seems sad and maybe a little trapped. And what's that with the ribbon tied around her throat? It's almost a metaphorical guillotining. Manet almost certainly chose the title of the work to be deliberately provocative. French courtesans often took classical stage names, such as Venus or Olympia, but Olympia was also the name of an especially famous courtesan from history, Olympia Medalcini, the sister-in-law and probably the mistress of Pope Innocent X back in the 1640s, a woman so powerful that she was nicknamed the female pope. Historians argue over whether she was in fact the Pope's mistress, but the French viewing audience would have known the rumors. Still more digs at the church. The Black Maid also scandalized the public. Unlike Titian's maidservant, she features prominently, although her face blends into the darkness. So why is she there? Some critics think she is a deliberate foil to Olympia's whiteness, maybe even a shout-out to the stark black-white contrasts of that new medium, photography. But other critics observe that the racial theories popular at the time, a perversion of Darwin's theories of survival of the fittest that associated people of color with bestiality, sexuality, what's called primitivism. And here's an interesting observation from an art blog. The black servant's presence also underscores the fact that the courtesan, unlike the common prostitute, exercises control and dominance, and it may even insinuate that those who yield to her charms are as subordinate as the black servant girl. Monet's painterly style also attracted criticism. Here's a quote from Princeton University art history professor Anne Macaulay. The paint sat there on the surface of the canvas. It wasn't just the fact that she's a nude, and she's a lower class nude, but also that she was painted in what many people read as almost childish or unskilled fashion. Note the contrast with our Academy Venus. Those brushstrokes virtually disappear. Okay, but is this loose brushstroke really an innovation, or does it remind you of any painters we've already studied? What about Velázquez, whose paintings Manet deeply admired and indeed copied to hone his skills, or Rembrandt, or Delacroix, or Turner? So is there really anything new here? Well, let me share another observation about Monet's technique from Paul Johnson's History of Art. Manet introduced an important change. In oil painting, the practice at the time was to begin with a dark underlay and then build up lighter tones on top of it using opaque layers of pigment and translucent glazes. Manet was an accomplished watercolorist, and he preferred to put on the lightest tones first and then put in the darks. This was a momentous change in oil painting because it was far quicker than the old method. This made outdoor work much easier and led inevitably to a higher range of colors. Pardon the dogs growling in the background. It made the canvas look slightly unfinished, but it also made it look fresher and more up-to-date. Notice, too, the relatively flat rendition of Manet's Olympia, much less modeled than Titian's Venus. Manet's dark and light tonal separations may reflect the influence of the new medium of photography. One art critic I read noted that in this painting and Luncheon on the Grass, light shines forward from the viewer. Lighting professionals sometimes refer to this frontal lighting as flat lighting because of its effects. The shade concentrates at the edge of forms, light areas bleach or turn lighter, surface textures and details are suppressed, and backgrounds go dim or black. Now, we look at photographs more often than we look at paintings, so we're actually used to frontal lighting. But it's one more reason why Monet's work would have startled the 19th century French public. So I came across this late 19th century photo of a Xhosa woman from what is now South Africa when I was Googling Manet Olympia photography. The photography blogger noted the resemblance to Olympia and also that, and I quote, commercial photographers in the colonies sold their images to eager audiences in the home country. But this photographer goes on to observe that there's not a hint of submissiveness or inferiority about this model. The flatness of Olympia may also reflect Manet's interest in Japanese woodblock prints, which were coming into fashion at the time and also tended to flatten pictorial perspective. Sorry about the squeaks, my puppy is chewing on something. The painting on the left is Manet's portrait of the realist novel Emile Zola. In Zola's studio, we see a woodblock print, a sketch for Olympia, and a sketch of Velázquez's Bacchus tacked to the wall. Did you remember that woodblock prints of the so-called floating world also captured the lives of elegant courtesans? Ah, that was back before Christmas. We will return to Japanese woodblock prints when we talk about the Impressionists. Interestingly, Olympia did make the cut at the Salon of 1865, where it was met by outrage. The Salon organizers decided to rehang it higher. They were afraid it would be vandalized. And the painting was not well received. One critic at the time described Olympia as, quote, a courtesan with dirty hands and wrinkled feet and the livid tint of a cadaver displayed at the morgue. And here are a couple of lithographs from those caricatures published at the time in the newspaper. Gotta love the cat. And here's our new friend Daumier's caricature of a family viewing Manet's Olympia, although I wonder if what's being caricatured here is the bourgeois audience that was so easily shocked. So let's close with a brief video clip from a video by an art critic we've encountered before touring Islamic art. He has an interesting take on why the public was so offended. See if you agree. And by the way, I shouldn't have said close because I have one last image. Now I will close with another famous Manet painting and another commentary on gender roles in 19th century France. Manet shows us a beautiful young barmaid arrayed with all the other items that are for sale to prosperous men of the upper middle class. Check out the mirror behind her and the man who is ogling her. That male gaze again. We've come a long way from Fragonard's adulterous aristocrat on the swing, or have we?